12. Intention. It means that the spiritual traveler should be single-minded and well-intentioned. The objective of this spiritual journey should be nothing but to pass away in Allah. The Quran says, "Worship Allah, keeping worship purely for Him." A number of reports say that there are 3 grades of intention. Imam Sadiq is reported to have said, "There are 3 kinds of worshippers. There are some who worship Allah because they are afraid of Him. Their worship is that of the slaves. There are some others who worship Allah for the sake of recompense. Their worship is that of the wage earners. There are still others who worship Allah because they love Him. Their worship is that of free men." On deep thinking, it appears that there are 2 kinds of worship. One of them is not worship at all in the right sense, because those who perform this kind of worship are actually self-worshippers. They are motivated by self-interest. As self-worshippers cannot be the worshippers of Allah, they may even be regarded as a sort of unbelievers. The Quran has described the worship of Allah as man's nature. At the same time, it has denied the possibility of any change in man's inborn qualities. Set your purpose for religion as a man by nature upright, the nature in which Allah has created man. There is no altering in the nature framed by Allah. That is the right religion, but most men do not know. Even this fact, Surah Ar-Rum, chapter 30, verse 30. Therefore, an act of worship actuated by self-interest is not only a deviation from the path of devotion to Allah, but is also a deviation from the path of monotheism. For these self-seekers appear not to believe in the unity of Allah in His actions and attributes because they associate someone else with Him. The Quran has everywhere proclaimed the unity of Allah and has denied the existence of any associate or partner with Him. The first 2 groups of worshippers mentioned above consider Allah to be their partner in their objectives and do not refrain from the idea of self-aggrandizement. Even in worshipping Him, they have double objective, and that is what is called polytheism, which according to the Quran is an unforgivable offense. Allah does not forgive that partners should be ascribed to Him. He pardons all save that to whom He will. Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 48. 116. It is clear from the above that the worship performed by the first 2 groups is not fruitful and will not bring the worshipper closer to Allah. As for the 3rd group, who worships Allah for the sake of love, their worship is that of free men, and according to a report, the most noble worship, it is a hidden position to which only the pure attain. Love means attraction, or in other words, to be drawn by some person or some truth. The 3rd group is of those who love Allah and are inclined towards Him. They have no objective other than being drawn to Him and gain His good pleasure. Their motive is their real beloved, and they try to move towards Him. Some reports say that Allah should be worshipped because He deserves being worshipped. He is fit and worthy of being worshipped because of His attributes. In other words, He is to be worshipped because He is Allah. Imam Ali says, "My Lord, I do not worship you because I am afraid of your hell. nor because I want your paradise. I worship you because I have found you fit for being worshipped. You yourself have guided me to you, and have called me to you. Had you not been, I would not have known what you are. In the beginning, the spiritual traveler goes forward with the help of love, but after traversing a few stages, he realizes that love is different from the beloved. Therefore, he tries to give up love, which has his means of progress so far, but which might prove a hindrance in his further advancement. Now he concentrates all his attention on the beloved whom he worships as his beloved only. When he goes a few steps further, he realizes that yet his worship is not free from duality, for he still considers himself to be the lover and Allah the beloved, while it is inconsistent with absolute unity of Allah to think of a lover of him. Therefore, the spiritual traveler tries to forget about love so that he may step into the world of unity from the world of plurality. At this stage, he ceases to have will and intention, for his distinctive personality has already passed away. Prior to this stage, the spiritual traveler was seeking vision, viewing, and sight. Now he forgets all these things, for when he has no intention, he can have no desire. In this state, it cannot be said whether the eyes and the heart of the spiritual traveler are functioning or not. To see and not to see, to know and not to know, all become irrelevant. Bayazid Bistami is reported to have said, "First I renounced the world, next day I renounced the hereafter. The third day I renounced everything other than Allah. The fourth day I was asked what I wanted. I said, I want that I do not want." Perhaps, taking a clue from this saying, some people have fixed the following 4 stages. 1. Renunciation of this world. 2. Renunciation of the hereafter. 3. Renunciation of the Lord. 4. Renunciation of renunciation. This is a point which requires deep consideration for being understood properly. This is the stage at which the spiritual traveler gives up all desires. This is a great achievement, but difficult to realize, for even at this stage, the spiritual traveler finds that his heart is not free from all desires and intentions. At least, he aspires to gain perfection. It is of no use to make any conscious effort to get rid of the desires, for such an effort itself involves a desire and an objective. One day, I spoke to my teacher, Mirza Ali Agha-Kazi, about this question and asked him what the solution of this problem was. He said that it could be resolved by adopting the method of burning. The spiritual traveler should realize that Allah has created him in such a way that he must always have some desires and ambitions. That is a part of his inborn nature. Howsoever he may try, he cannot eliminate all desires. Therefore, he should realize his powerlessness and give up all efforts to that effect. In that case, he will entrust his case to Allah. The feeling of powerlessness will not only purify him, but will also burn the roots of all desire. Anyhow, it must be kept in mind that only theoretical knowledge of this point is not enough. The spiritual traveler must develop a real taste for it. If such a taste is developed, it can be more pleasure-giving than anything else in the world. This method is called burning, for it burns out the very existence of will and intention and uproots them completely. The Quran has used this method on a number of occasions. One instance is the use of the divine expression, We belong to Allah and to Him we shall return. Anybody who uses this method will find that it produces very quick results. At the time of calamities, disasters, and mishaps, man consoles himself in different ways. For example, he reminds himself that death and misfortunes are the destiny of all human beings. But Allah has suggested the burning method as a short-cut by prescribing the above formula to be uttered on such occasions. If man realizes that he himself and all that he possesses and all that belongs to him in any way are all owned by Allah, who has full power and authority to dispose of them as He wills and pleases, he will not grieve for any loss and will feel relieved. Man should know that factually he is not the owner of anything. His ownership is only phenomenal. In reality, everything belongs to Allah, who gives whatever He will and takes away whatever He will. Nobody has a right to interfere in what he does. Man should know that he has been created wishful, ambitious, and needy. All that is a part of his inborn nature. Therefore, when the spiritual traveler is filled with any sort of yearning during his spiritual journey, he suspects that it is not possible for him to be totally free from desires, and that passing away in Allah, which is the basis of the worship of free men, is inconsistent with his innate propensities to will and desire. In these circumstances, he is perplexed and feels helpless. But it is this feeling of helplessness that effaces his egoism, which is the basis of will and desire. Therefore, after passing this stage, no trace of will and desire is left. This point is worth understanding well. 13. Silence. There are two kinds of silence. 1. General and relative. 2. Particular and absolute. Relative silence means to refrain from talking to people in excess to what is absolutely required. This kind of silence is necessary for the spiritual traveler at every stage. It is commendable for others also. Imam Ja'far Sadiq referred to this kind of silence when he said, "Our partisans Shia are dumb." A report is mentioned in the Misbah Sharia, according to which Imam Ja'far Sadiq has said, "Silence is the way of lovers of Allah, because Allah likes it. It is the style of the prophets and the habit of the chosen people." According to another report, Imam Ja'far Sadiq said, "Silence is a part of wisdom. It is a sign of every virtue." Particular and absolute silence means to refrain from talking during verbal recollection of Allah. 14. Abstaining from food, or at least observing frugality. It is recommended on the condition that it should not disturb mental peace and composure. Imam Ja'far Sadiq has said, "The believer enjoys hunger. For him, hunger is the food of the heart and the soul. Hunger illuminates the soul and makes it lighter, whereas overeating makes it dull and tired, and hampers its soaring to the heaven of Gnosis. Out of the acts of worship, fasting has been lauded a great deal." A number of reports concerning the Holy Prophet's ascension to the heavens have been mentioned in Dailami's Irshad and the Biharul Anwar Volume 2. In these reports, the Holy Prophet has been addressed as Ahmad. These reports underline the beneficial points of starvation, especially its wonderful effect in connection with spiritual journey. My teacher, the late Ali Agha Qazi, once related a wonderful story about starvation. In short, he said, once during the days of the former prophets, 3 persons were traveling together. At nightfall, they set out in 3 different directions with a view to get food, but agreed to assemble next morning at a particular place at an appointed time. One of them was already invited by some person. The second man also by chance became the guest of someone. The third man had no place to go to. He said to himself that he should go to the mosque to be the guest of Allah. He passed the night in the mosque, but could get no food. Next morning they assembled at the appointed place, and each one of them related his story. At that time the Prophet of the time received a revelation to the following effect: "Tell our guest that we were his host last night, and wanted to provide him with sumptuous food, but found that there was no food better than hunger." 15. Solitude. There are 2 kinds of solitude also: general and particular. General solitude means not to mix with other people, especially the ignorant masses, and to meet them only as and when absolutely necessary. The Quran says, "And forsake those who rake their religion for a pastime and a jest, and whom the life of the world beguiles." Surah Al-An'am, chapter 6, verse 70. Particular solitude means to keep away from all men. Such kind of seclusion is commendable at the time of performing all acts of worship, but is considered essential by the Gnostics at the time of pronouncing certain liturgies. In this connection, the following points must be observed. For the spiritual traveler, it is necessary to keep himself away from crowds and disturbing noises. The place where he performs acts of worship must be clean and lawful. Even the walls and the ceilings of his room must be tidy. His room should be a small one, preferably accommodating only 1 person. A small room having no furniture and no decorating material is helpful in keeping the thoughts concentrated. A man sought Salman Farsi's permission to build a house for him. Till then Salman had not built a house for himself. Still, he refused to give the permission. That man said, "I know why you do not give permission." "Say why," said Salman. He said, "You want me to build you a house only so long and so wide that it may accommodate you only." "Yes, that's the thing. You are right," said Salman. Subsequently, that man built for Salman, with his permission, a house of that small size. 16. Vigil. It means that the spiritual traveler must make it a habit to wake up before dawn as early as he tolerably can, denouncing the sleeping at dawn and praising the keeping awake at that time. Allah says, "They used to sleep only a little, while at night and at dawn used to seek forgiveness." Surah Al-Dariyat, chapter 51, verse 18. Number 17. Continued cleanliness. It means to be always ritually pure and to adhere to the performance of major ablution on Fridays, and on all other occasions on which it has been recommended. Number 18. Practicing modesty and humility to the utmost degree. It includes weeping and wailing also. Number 19. Abstaining from tasty food. The spiritual traveler should abstain from tasty dishes and should be content with a little food, as is absolutely necessary to sustain his life and energy. Number 20. Secrecy. It is one of the most important points to be observed by a spiritual traveler. The great Gnostics have been very particular about it, and have laid great stress on it. They advised their pupils to keep their spiritual exercises, as well as their visions, etc., secret. If simulation is not possible, equivocation must be resorted to. If necessary, spiritual exercises may be abandoned for some time to maintain secrecy. Try to fulfill your needs by maintaining secrecy. At the time of sufferings and calamities, simulation and secrecy make the things easier. If the spiritual traveler faces any hardships, he should go forward patiently. Seek help in patience and prayers. Truly, it is hard except for the humble-minded. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 45. In this verse, the word salat, prayers, has been used in its literal sense. That is attention to Allah. On this basis, it may be inferred from this verse that patience in the remembrance of Allah makes the hardships less burdensome and paves the way to success. That is why it is often observed that the people who become extremely restless when their small finger is cut do not worry in the least about losing their limbs and organs in the battlefield. According to this general rule, the Imams have laid great success on secrecy, and even have considered abandoning simulation a grave sin. Sheikh Saduq in his book At-Tawheed has quoted a report saying that one day Abu Basir asked Imam Ja'far Sadiq if it was possible to see Allah on the day of resurrection. He asked so because the Ash'a'irah, the followers of the Sunni Imam Abu Hassan Ash'ari, believe that all people will see Allah on the day of resurrection and in the hereafter, which is obviously not possible without incarnation. Allah is far above what these wrongdoers say. The Imam said, it is possible to see Allah even in this world, as you saw him here just now. Abu Basir said, Son of the Prophet, allow me to relate this event to others. The Imam did not allow him to do so and said, Don't relate it to others, otherwise they will not be able to comprehend the truth and will go astray for no reason.